son came to town.
Merry Christmas.
And he is the author of this book that I was telling you about, Surviving the Lion's Den. And I thought it would be fun to do a little interview with him to find out why he wrote the book and how he came about creating the story and everything that went on in his head. So I wrote down some questions, and he might have more to add than what I wrote down. So let's see. Did I introduce you?
No, you just said I was your son.
Oh, his name is Matt. Matt Scott, the author of the book. So the first question is, what made you write the book?
It was a combination of a couple of things. I had read a couple of books about an Iranian who was with the Revolutionary Guard that started working in the FBI in the 80s. So I'd always been kind of interested in Iran and, why they hate us so much. So the idea of, Iran was always kind of circling around my head because not too many Americans know what goes on there. I'd always had a little bit of a talent for writing, but I was just never able to pull the trigger. And then I read a number of novels by Vince Flynn and Brad Thor. It really kind of hooked me on to the national security side of writing. And then 3 years ago, my dad and I went to William & Mary and got to meet David Baldacci. And I was 39 at the time, and I asked him, I was 40 too old to write my first novel. He stops mid-signature and looks up at me and he says, "Oh, hell no, the industry could use some good young writers." So I didn't know if I should be happier that this legend of the industry was telling me to go forth and with my mythic destiny, or that he thought 40 was young. But either way, I just started doing some research after I got home. At that point, I had no excuses, so I just kind of went for it.
So what goes into that, and I think you probably touched on it, is why did you pick that genre?
Well, they say you write what you know. So the idea is that, if I'm reading political spy thrillers, that's going to be the thing that, makes me want to write more. So I wouldn't say you write what you know, but you write what you're interested in, and you write what you would want others to read or what you would want to read.
Right.
So you just that's where you kind of stay in the genre. I mean, when I'm reading, I'll take a break, every once in a while to do something nonfiction or even something, along the psychological thriller. But, long story short, if you're interested in it, that's what you should be writing in.
And he majored in political science and history at Hampton-Sydney College, so that's kind of where his bent is anyway.
Yeah. And
as his mother, I can say, even when he was a little fella, just old enough to know how to write and maybe spell some words, second grade maybe, he would write little comic books about a dinosaur named Annie. I know you don't want me to tell him that. And he'd do the bubble and he'd color and he'd color in all that. And I still have those little comic books he wrote.
Lord.
So when he's rich and famous, I'm going to publish them.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so the next question is, how did you go about your character development?
Character development, you have the idea of what you want to do with your basic plot line, and then you have to think about all the characters that you want involved in it. So you have to come up with a backstory for every single character. Once you have the characters down, you understand their motivations, the rest of it really kind of comes pretty easy. It's always about, you always have to have a good name. My lead character's name is Kirk Carruthers, and Kirk Carruthers was actually, I'm a Florida State fan. Kirk Carruthers was a tight end for Florida State back in the early 90s. I just changed the spelling.
I didn't know that.
And then on the Iranian names, thank God for the International Olympic Committee and them posting the rosters of the Iranian teams online. So you just try and limit the names to what Americans could pronounce, because as Americans, we don't process foreign names very well, so you have to pick them out and make them no more than 3 syllables. So I tried to make that a little bit easy, but you always, for every character you have, it has to have a backstory, it has to have motivation. What do they want in the end? And then you just kind of weave the plot in and out based on the research. And I'm convinced that once you have the characters down, that everything else goes.
That's what I was wondering, because my next question was, how did you even start the book storyline? So you had the characters first?
No, I had the plot first. I knew that I wanted to write a book about a CIA agent escaping from Iran. But as I kind of refined it, because I went through a couple different drafts, the first draft was much more different than the end product ended up being. Yeah,
I didn't know that. See, I'm learning things I didn't know.
It was 130,000 words. It was about 3 friends that go to Iran looking for purpose, and they end up in the middle of this conspiracy. So I actually had to change the first third of the book. But the plot line kind of came first because I knew all the little things that I wanted to put into it with the Russians and, the connection back to the coup, the 1953 coup, and then I came up with the characters. But so you have your basic plot first, and then your characters, and then you kind of throw in the little subplots here and there.
Yeah, and there were a lot of subplots, not a lot, but several that kept you, even though you had the main plot, these little subplots really kept you on the edge of your seat as you were reading the book.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things you always do with a character to keep it interesting is you throw as much at them as you possibly can, because as the reader's busy reading, they don't have time to figure out what's going on because they want to see what happens next.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay. Do you have any tips on publishing a book?
That one's tough because I've been through quite a bit during the publishing process, so I don't really want to go into that. But what I can tell you is after you've written a book, make sure it's as good as it can possibly be, even if you have to hire your own editor, because you want it to be as pristine as possible when you go to do query letters to literary agents. Make sure that you have a airtight and very good query letter to the literary agents, because these agents in New York, they see hundreds of them every day, and a lot of them could be in the thriller genre. And I got passed over, if I had to guess, close to 100 times.
Really?
Yeah, I got passed over a lot. So your query letter just has to be airtight, and it should be really no more than 1 page at the most. So make sure you have a good query letter, and then when you go to do the query process, I would, a lot of agents will tell you that you only query 1 agent at a time. That's insane. Don't do that. Send them out, and if you get a lot of bites, if you're lucky, you create a bidding war between the agents. So that's really what you want. But I would query no more than 5, to 10 agents at a time. So you have your top 5, organizing your top 5, then your B list, then your C list. And if you start not getting good responses after you get through your B list, you may need to refine your query letter a little bit. But always, if you're curious about literary agents to query, Writer's Digest publishes a book for all of the agents available based on the genre that you want to be in. You can get that on Amazon, and you just go down the list and you start looking them up on the internet, and you just start querying. A lot of them have gone to form letters now, but if you expect rejection, because it's gonna happen.
And it hurts, doesn't it?
After a while, it started to sting a little bit, but I expected it so much that it didn't sting too bad. It only started to sting when I started to, run out. I just kind of kept hoping for it to happen, and eventually it did.
Well, how did you come up with your editor? Did you find your editor first?
Before I started querying? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You have to, if you want to refine your novel or your book or your screenplay or whatever it is, it's got to be in pristine shape. So make sure it's well edited before you go into the query process.
Okay, so he has written 3 books. Can you tell us the title of the next 2?
Yeah, the second one is going to be called The Iranian Deception. It's with the publisher now. I expect we'll probably start working on it in April, May-ish. So I would expect a June, July, sometime summer release. I don't have the date yet. The second one, I can give you a little bit of a taste of it. The Beth Jenkins character wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning to a call from one of her agents inside Iran. You come to know him as Farad because he's from the first book. So first of all, the second book is a continuation of the first book. So it's all at one series. So let's make sure that's out there. And the supreme leader of Iran has died, and the Council of Experts has elected a new supreme leader within 3 hours. And it's not someone that anyone would want. And because of the economic sanctions against Iran, the supreme leader has some pretty devious plans up his sleeve to get the sanctions removed.
So that ought to keep you on the edge of your seat.
And here's a little bit of a spoiler. There's a Nazi connection.
So those of you who like Nazi World War II stuff, that might be good.
Yeah. And then the third one is called the Ayatollah Takedown. I can't tell you too much about it, but it puts the series to bed a little bit, although I leave a couple things open-ended. I would imagine that comes out in early 2023, and I just finished the first draft, so I can't tell you too much about that one.
Okay, well, we'll just have to wait and see about that one. Back to the first book, Surviving the Lion's Den. What part of the book did you like best? Without giving too much away for people who haven't read it.
I think I liked the fact that I was able to. Okay, so I one of the things that I loved in my early 20s and early 30s was the show 24. So there was always, one of the themes to the show throughout its series was there's always one insider. So I can't tell you too much without spoiling it, but there is an insider that kind of spawned the plot to have the CIA agent Tom DeLange kidnapped. So I kind of like the way I weaved it in and out, because I wanted to keep the readers guessing as to who can be trusted and who can't, and that's kind of the way the book goes. Is like you're never really sure who can be trusted. So I like the way that I did that, and there's some other elements regarding friendship that I kind of put in there.
Yeah,
but it all goes back. It all goes back to who can you trust and who can't you trust.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
well, what advice would you give to somebody that wanted to write a book? Just follow what you just said about getting your query letter, and I would say don't be afraid. Go ahead and do it.
Yeah, don't be afraid. Just don't be afraid. Don't worry about your first draft is always going to be your worst draft. It's all about getting it out on paper. So it's called us writers call it throwing up on paper. It's all about just getting it out. So and then you can always go back to edit and refine it a little bit. So get the first draft out. Don't be afraid to do it. And the only difference is between a writer who gets published and a writer who doesn't get published is the writer that gets published never gives up. So just don't stop writing. Just stop. Believe in your
abilities.
Believe in your ability. Believe in your story. Know your story inside and out, and don't be afraid to make changes, because sometimes the changes you don't want to make are what's going to hold the story back. So don't be afraid to kill a character off if it needs to be done. The delete key is your friend.
Well, I would like to add too, have a supportive family, because Matt's wife was very supportive of him doing this.
She was.
And it's not cheap to have a book published. So you've got to, and I'm just speaking from what I've learned from him, when you make the decision to write the book, you're in it to the end. You have to be committed. And
but here's a little secret she probably hasn't told you. She didn't know I was doing it.
No, I didn't. No, I did not know he was writing the book until last Christmas. He gave us a scroll with a ribbon around it, and it had the name of the book. And I was like, opened it, and we go, what? And he told us that he'd been accepted by a publisher and the book was going to be published. And then he told us about it. But I did not read the book until it actually came out in print. He said he would send me the draft of it, but I did not want to read it until I had the physical book in my hand, and the same for the next two. Now, my husband's brother, Matt's uncle, was a beta reader, and he's read them all, and he said, oh, it's really good, you're gonna like it. So, and he's an avid reader, he can read a book a day. So when he said that, I'm like, there's something to this.
Yeah.
So, and let's just end this by saying, what was the best part of writing the book? He hasn't gotten a paycheck yet, so
no,
that can't be the best part yet.
It's not. Yeah. I would say it's being able to sit down and the way I write. There's really two types of writers. There's outliners and pantsers. Now, the difference between an outliner and a pantser is an outliner basically goes chapter by chapter, writes down what they want to write about in that chapter. It ends up being, a couple of paragraphs, and they move on. So they stick to it, and they write the novel based on that. Pantsers sit down, they have no idea, and they literally write by the seat of their pants. I'm a little bit of a blend. So what I'll do is I'll outline the first half of the book in Excel, and I'll just say chapter 1, Susan goes here, and I have an idea of where I want her to go and who I want her to interact with, but then I just kind of write it from there. So I guess I loved the fact that, when there were times where I wasn't sure what was going to happen, when you're writing in the moment, sometimes the ideas just kind of come to you, and you didn't know how you were going to figure your way out of it, but somehow you did, and once you finish the chapter, you're like, that was good. You can't believe you did that.
I can't believe he wrote this. I read it and I'm like, is this my son? Is this my son? I mean, I just can't believe how talented he is. And I know I'm his mother and I'm prejudiced, but I don't typically read this genre. I have read some of Joel Rosenberg's books and I love them. So I kind of knew that I would like the book, but I really did love it. And I think I would say that even if he was not my son. So you can buy this book on Amazon. I think it's $17.99.
$17.95 on
$95, or you can get it the Kindle version. I don't know how much.
$7.99.
$7.99. So go to Amazon, get the book. It's going to be a long, cold winter, so it would give you something to do. Read the book. And some of my subscribers have already bought it and given it to their family members for Christmas. And I thank you for that. We thank you.
Thank you for that.
And we just want to support a rising author. And you told me how many new books are published a year, wasn't that?
5 million.
5 million books a year are published. I think I read a lot, but I certainly couldn't read that many.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe a fraction.
It's a tough industry to be successful in. So, but for me, it was one of those things that, I would regret if I didn't do it. There are things I wish that, I think I would do differently the next time around. But, so far it's, small incidents aside, it's been, what I had hoped it would be. And, I would have regretted not doing it. On the storyline, for those of you who, may not be into like the CIA political spy thriller, there is a very personal journey by the main character to get revenge for his grandfather. So you have the CIA character, and then you have the protagonist, Kirk Carruthers, who was not related to the CIA at all. And then he goes into Iran and finds himself in the middle of this situation. So you don't necessarily have to be, in love with, a government thriller to enjoy it, because the Kirk Carruthers character is an everyday guy. And that's kind of what I wanted from it. Is I wanted, people who are into the genre
can relate to that.
Can relate to it. And for people that, aren't, don't like it too much, or not into the spy thriller genre as much, I feel like, the Kirk Carruthers character was written very well. there's a romance angle to it. So, you know,
and some of it takes place in the United States. It's
does.
not all in
Yeah,
Iran.
it starts out
so,
in the United States.
you get a taste, and if you're from North Carolina, there's a little snippet of North Carolina in there.
Mhm.
So
Asheville, DC is in there.
the beaches, the Outer Banks.
Yeah, there is an Outer Banks. There's
So
part to it.
anyway, I hope you've enjoyed hearing what he had to say about it. And, you know, I'm the proud mama, and I'm using my YouTube channel to boast about him, and I'm not going to apologize. So we wish you a Merry Christmas and enjoy your family and friends. I am having surgery 2 days after Christmas on my hip. I have a torn tendon, so it's going to be a long recovery. So I don't know how many weeks it'll be before I can get back and visit with my friends, my virtual friends, but I'll try to keep you updated. But until then, you all have a Merry Christmas and a very, very happy New Year. And we're going to pray that 2022 is going to be the best year ever. So thank you.
Thank you guys. Merry
and bye.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Have a good one.